the new dungeons that await us.
What do we got?
The new dungeon. So we have the complete list now for all of the dungeons, right? Okay, so let's take them one by one. All right. So Cinder Brew Midray. I kind of like this one. It felt like a little bit shorter, and the reason I really like it is because
the first pool.
Yes,
I knew you were gonna say that. That was exactly what I was gonna say.
But it's still a short dungeon. It's only 3 bosses, if I'm not mistaken, and it's like easily traversable. So it's. I think this is gonna be one of the quote unquote farm dungeons.
It's a good dungeon because it also gives you pathing options. You can go either left or right after the first boss. So it gives you feels like Grim Battle definitely linear, Dawnbreaker definitely linear. I thought that Dawnbreaker would offer us more ways to approach dungeon, but it's becoming very cookie cutter.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know a lot of people hate Dawnbreaker. I personally like it, but I'm kind of getting tired of it as well, to be honest. And I think it's good to like have dungeons like now Mists of Chernasite, where it's like easy, smooth through, no problemo. Having Cinder Brew Midray finally get into it, I think this is gonna be our Mists of Chernasite.
Sure, that would
if
be
if it's not, because there's still some crazy ass mechanics over there, and we don't know how those are gonna scale to Mythic. You know what I'm talking about.
Not as crazy as the next one that's coming.
Oh no, we're gonna get okay. So you want to jump to it? All right. So Dark Flame Cleft.
Oh boy.
Okay.
So everybody obviously says the most obvious stuff about this dungeon. I actually hope that it goes live because it's gonna be one crazy shitstorm.
Dude, that's true, and I'm almost convinced it's gonna be a shit show at launch. Okay, I'm almost convinced.
I'm 90% sure it's gonna be vastly changed from what we've played in the beta.
I hope so, man, because I think like the biggest problem with this is the actual, you know that part where you jump into the cart and you have the thing follow you.
Yeah.
So there's 2 things here. Either you put a generous timer on that bitch, or you just completely remove that part, because that doesn't make like. I mean, it's fine when you do it on heroic, M0 maybe, because that's the fantasy of whatever.
Okay.
If you want to push that key, that will be just an annoyance.
So the thing is, that is very scripted, and it doesn't even matter how many dynamites you throw at the boss. At least it doesn't matter. That doesn't last longer or shorter depending on what you do. It always lasts the exact same amount of time, so that can affect.
It will affect the timer.
That's fine, but they can just
kill it.
They've stop it. They've increased the timer of the dungeon, and that's fine. That's not the problem. The problem is getting there. Because getting there and the last boss mechanic, it depends on how this translates. Because
the one with the light and dark, right?
Yes.
And you have to get the candles and stuff.
Because in the last boss
that's gonna
mechanic,
be fun.
You have to pick it, you have to drop it, you have to pick it, you have to drop it to maximize the time that you spend in the light. And if you go a little bit too out of the light, you will do 99% less damage. So that's and if the tank does that, the tank does no threat on the boss, and then just kills everybody. Man. And then you have a lot of mechanics that will probably happen, plus probably the affixes that we will have. Plus, this means that somebody in the party has to do that, and we go back to not being able to play your class, which wouldn't be a problem if we didn't have 17 mechanics.
Other mechanics happening at the same time. Exactly. So yes, we are worried about the Dark Flame Cleft in Mythic Plus. Hopefully, they will address a lot of these things in Season 2. Now, the Rookery. We did a lot of the Rookery at the beginning of the expansion.
I so don't want to jinx it, but this feels like it's going to be a very good dungeon since it didn't feel
Again, another short one, I feel.
Yeah, that's... so I'm talking about, once again, about the pool sizes. I feel like since I've been tanking, maybe I'm a little bit biased towards this, but as a tank, it's so boring to pull 1 or 2 packs because there's not much to do except just hit your AoE once or twice every 5 seconds, and that's it. You don't really do much of else. You kind of feel like you want to pull more. The cool part about Rookery is that when we tested it on beta, there weren't mobs that would be stopping you from doing big pulls, as opposed to Cinder Brew Midray in the first pull that's very famous for having like crazy DPS numbers. There are mobs that constantly throw little abilities that stun you, and they do quite a little bit of damage. Normally on beta, whenever we did that, like 2 hits would probably kill you. It's probably going to scale even higher on live, depending on how they're going to be addressing the dungeon scaling. So those will be the critical mass point of no return, wherever if you pull 1 or too many of those, it will completely wipe you, meaning that you're just not going to be able to pull a lot if they do decide to tune it that way.
So Rookery, I don't think you're going to jinx it. I think it is going to be one of the better dungeons to run. I think it's going to be more or less similar in speed and timers as Cinder Brew Midray. But we have to talk about Prairie of the Sacred Flame. Do you see so many flames put anything to here?
People love me, or I have no originality when picking my name. One of the two.
All right.
Go with the former.
So Priory of Sacred Flame. Now, we kind of like speculated this is going to be with a different type of patch, with Hollowfall Empire. No, that turns out not to be the case. Okay, well, I was wrong. I fully take accountability for that. Now, where I see here a problem is with the trash bags when you go inside and you have those...
You mean the ones that kept wiping us?
Exactly, Flame. Do you remember?
That because might actually turn the meta into range meta, by the way.
I don't know, man. All I remember is like whenever you were tanking, or I was tanking, or RJ was tanking, or Mogi, there's those guards. I cannot remember the name that put this debuff on you. That chunk the hell out of your health, and that was in fucking heroic M0s and stuff.
I don't remember a particular debuff. What I do remember
when you're inside, like it has this icon from like a Crusader strike or something. And I was healing and seeing that shit, and every tank that was doing it was taking so much damage, it was ridiculous. And all I'm thinking about the nerfs to healers and tanks and that debuff. Get the fuck out! I'm not healing that.
On top of that, what I also remember is all the paladin mobs that drop consecration, that you can 100% not
I forgot
stay
about
in,
that.
and you have to constantly move the pack. There are those that do the I think they do the divine hammer spinny thing. I think that's just the boss.
That's the boss.
That's probably just the boss.
Yeah.
But there's let's call it, in terms that we can understand, the priest mobs that cast smites and greater heals in the back, and you have the paladin mobs that cast consecration. So what you have to do is take the whole pack and constantly move it. Guess what? You're not gonna have enough kicks for the priest in the back to constantly move it with the pack.
Welcome to Mythic Plus.
So what you're going to probably do is not invite any mages, warlocks, and anything that can put something on the ground that has to stay in that ground. That's not gonna be there since nothing is gonna stay in anything. Oh, DKs too. I guess Frost Decay might get a pass, but Unholy's probably gonna hate its life because nothing's gonna be in Death and Defile ever.
Yeah.
That's one problem. And there's just so many casters in Priory of the Sacred Flame, and a lot of them are immune to crowd controls. I think Priory of the Sacred Flame, if they don't address these issues, might actually come out and put new issues on the table, which were always issues, which means way too many casters.
Which means more wrap-up shows.
Yeah, that's fine for us. Content. But I think that's probably going to change. We'll see exactly how it plays out, because they've made changes like these even in Dragonflight. If you do remember, but Brackenhide Hold in the first season was... Hollow was kind of like a joke dungeon until it became a seasonal dungeon.
Until it became a problem dungeon. Yeah.
So they changed the way the mechanics
they actually nerfed Brackenhide a couple of times.
They also nerfed it after that, for sure.
Yeah.
But remember how they changed, because we're probably going to get to the Battle for Azeroth dungeon and the Legacy dungeons as well. They usually make tweaks to these when it comes to Mythic Plus to kind of more accurately align them with their philosophy of the current Mythic Plus season.
The problem is they always do these after the fact. And we know, because we do these keys on PTR all the time and feedback the shit out of it, and nothing happens. They go live like that, and then in a couple of weeks' time, they start nerfing the shit out of them. So that's the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned Battle for Azeroth. This is one of my favorite dungeons in BFA, the Motherload.
Good times.
I mean, okay, it's gonna be way different than when we remembered it.
Because if it's not, then it's gonna be old school dungeons, and they don't like that.
But it's not old school, man. You cannot call this old school. This is part of modern WoW.
No. Old school. Okay, so
I mean, if they're gonna add new things to interrupt spells and to stop mechanics, I'm gonna kill myself.
I was a main...
Don't kill this dungeon for me, Blizzard, please.
You probably don't remember, but I was a main tank at the end of Battle for Azeroth. So the way I used to play this dungeon is pull the first pack, and the second, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth, and go after a corner, put Death and Decay with Grip of the Dead there, everybody was slowed, and you would fight about 30 mobs at once. Do you think that's going to make it into the live season?
I don't think so. But it was a super fun dungeon, and of course it's very in theme with the Goblin theme of
They would have had to put it, for sure.
It had to be done. One of the coolest things of this dungeon was, I think, the first boss. That was with the soccer ball.
That was such a cool
That was such a inventive
People are gonna
way.
wipe like crazy.
I cannot wait to see that happening.
Kicking the ball wrong, taking all the frontals. It had some like crazy healing mechanics that needed to be healed.
There was that AoE. I don't know if he stomped the ground or whatever, and you jumped off. That was like AoE all around.
Yeah, as a tank, you have to constantly move it around. So there was back then healing wasn't as difficult as it is now, but that was a difficult healing thing to do. And if you translate it in today's healing, it's gonna suck.
So it's gonna be interesting to see. I'm just praying that they're not gonna butcher this dungeon and add more stuff to it, because I'm gonna be pissed and do a video about it. Now, in terms of Operation Floodgate, we have nothing. We have no information. We don't know the routes. We don't know the mobs, but I would feel it's gonna be something.
It's a modern dungeon. It's probably gonna be in theme with the War Within. It's probably gonna have a lot of mechanics.
I see it's gonna be in theme with Motherload, yeah, because I mean it's there. It's the same thing.
I meant more in the systematical design of it, with 3 different casts per pack, with 2 extra stuns and a tank buster. So
yeah, the usual classic formula for a Mythic Plus dungeon in World of Warcraft. All right, but we do have Teeter of Pain.
This is an interesting choice.
Coming to listen, man. I kind of like Teeter of Pain in Shadowlands.
I do want to come meet the people halfway that liked the Shadowlands as an expansion. I do have to agree that
Shadowlands as a hold up. I just said Teeter of Pain.
Yeah.
Who loved Shadowlands?
I'm getting to that. There's some people. Listen, you can enjoy what you enjoy. No judgment here. But the dungeons were really good in the way that they were designed. The theme of it all being around, death concepts, it's a hit and miss. But the actual mechanics, the pacing, the pathing of the dungeons, what you had to do, they were really good. It was really fun to do dungeons in Shadowlands.
Yes, I agree.
At least for us,
I agree.
At least, and especially for me, because I cannot talk for you. But when it went to shit, it's kind of the only thing that kept us going, man. Because the rating was a little bit off.
Yeah. Everything we did, I think we did more dungeons in Shadowlands than we did ever in WoW. I think for the most part, yeah, you mentioned the theme of Shadowlands. This was but this was basically like the Necrolords, right?
Yeah.
This is basically their zone over there. What I remember in Teeter of Pain is always being on edge on the last boss. Always trying to make the timer for the last boss. If I'm not mistaken, the last boss on this was when you actually get back out, and it's what was it? The lady thing. There was
the mages,
something, but and that was. I don't remember.
Sure.
But it was in the center of the arena, back up there, and there was a couple of mechanics over there that
they were pretty.
They were intense. They were intense back then.
We used to get the shades that had to spawn that we had to AoE down, and she was doing this sucking pull into a big AoE
and some nice cone damage that would get a lot of people one shot. Mokti was a lot of times one shot by that shit. I have footage to prove. He was a champion on that. Wasn't Teeter of Pain the one where you had to the duel thing?
Yes.
I think this was it, right?
Yeah.
Another interesting and cool mechanic. Not super impactful, but
people gamed the shit out of it.
Of course, because it's not PvP.
Just let yourself loose.
It was okay, who's the better DPS here? Who has the more?
Who's taking the PS?
Yeah, you sit down, and I'm gonna wing, so I'm gonna pump that damage.
You're gonna want Augmentation Evoker for that to take the L, so that you can get giga boosted once you guys get out. Both Augmentation and the PI and the buff from the duel is gonna crank.
And that's how you establish meta. All right. I'm personally excited for Teeter of Pain. I'm interested to see how they're going to make it work.
I'm actually curious for sure to see how they implement it.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to have much to ruin. I already feel it was pretty much a difficult dungeon to begin with. If they're going to add even more casts and abilities, well, then fuck you. All right, a returning dungeon. This has been in
a very recent one.
Yeah, workshop. I think we had it at the end of Shadowlands in the Fated season.
Yeah. We had 2 mega dungeons, if I recall. In the Fated season.
I think we had workshop. We had junkyard, and we had
the 2 Tazavesh dungeons.
We had the Grimrail. Yeah. So we had both of them, but this is returning. So
I expected one of them to come. I would have expected Junkyard, because it feels like we've had Workshop a little bit too many times, way more than Junkyard. But maybe I'm mistaken.
Wasn't Workshop and Junkyard in season 4 of Shadowlands at the same time available?
But I think we had a Workshop before that. Well, anyway, I might be misremembering.
I just feel that
this is the worst one of the two, by the way. Especially
I rather play Junkyard.
Yeah, Junkyard was really cool because it was kind of all outside. It felt a little bit more open. It felt like, once again, it had more pathing. It's Mechagon, maybe, Workshop rather, maybe feels more in touch with the whole Undermine situation where you're inside. So it's another inside dungeon. Okay, I guess. I kind of want a little bit more outside, to be fair.
Yeah, you're getting claustrophobic a little bit.
And the last boss is so brutal.
Is the last boss the one with the spinning wheels and the...
Yep. It's
Oh
the
my
big
God.
robot with
Oh
the
my
constant
God.
frontals that you had to like dodge. Everybody had specific
But also,
positions.
there's that one. But also, isn't the one where you have like little flames and robots and like little.
Yeah, yep, the
there's
boss that
also,
kept
that's
with
gonna
the
be like
rotating flames and the cogwheels.
Okay,
yeah.
we're gonna get fucked. Okay, because this was
And not in
this,
a fun way.
This was already problematic in the Faded seasons. Now
Yeah,
with the whole,
that was actually the harder boss of the whole dungeon.
that's how I remember it. I feel like okay, the last boss was problematic as well, but I feel a lot of times we died.
You could muscle through it. It was very punishing and very hard to heal, but you could
still
muscle
push
through it.
Yeah, you could still push through it. Now the same issue and concern remains here. Are they going to add even more things to Workshop? Because okay, now to bosses, I feel it's pretty hard to add more stuff. To be fair, I mean,
Well, so this is a good discussion because we can cross references with the legacy dungeons that we have right now. Because Mists of Tuner sites, definitely Grim Batol have way more mechanics than they had in the day.
well,
Even
Grim
Mists of
Batol
Tuner-
had to have it because Grim Batol, like,
Yeah.
if you just take it at face value, Cataclysm.
It was that. Well, we
What are
can
you
say the
gonna
same
do?
thing about Vortex Pinnacle and Throne of the Tides that we had in Dragonflight. But
Yeah.
even Mists of Tuner side, the last boss was changed. Remember, it didn't used to be that way.
Oh my god, they
didn't
changed
used
it to hell, and I hated them for that. That was
And that was a
ridiculous.
more recent dungeon.
Okay, now that you mention it, that's a good point. They're probably gonna change the shit out of all
So
of them.
that's why I mean that,
Fuck!
that these
We're
dungeons
fucked!
are not. I don't know what they're gonna do to the bosses in Workshop. To be fair, the whole concept of, and this is why I'm actually personally excited about Undermine as a content. They can do wacky things. Like even with Workshop, the mechanics are wacky. The last boss has a big mech suit that slams its fists on the ground, and it has a magnet that pulls you in, and occasional little doom zones where you die. So it's all gnarly, all cool. And even with the mythic with the Turner Scythe, the changes to the last boss to Tredova are crazy punishing, but they're fun mechanics, right? So I'm curious to see how they will
Fun my
alter
ass.
this all again. Well, you know, it's not fun to heal, but
Oh my god, healers! I always pity the healers on the last boss because it's ridiculous.
the last
Like,
boss also has like problems with, and this has to be addressed somehow, with invisible puddles, with bug puddles, where you would take damage from puddles by not being in the puddles.
Yes.
And I've seen your unholy footage. Do you know that Defile obstructs all of the puddles? They do. It sucks.
do I know? Do they know? Because I always complain about the file, and it's becoming a very much how do you call it? I am becoming a very good psychic. Like I try to sense
Nostradamus.
I try to sense where shit is on the ground, and I constantly move. Maybe I get lucky and don't
spatial
get,
geometry in your head is like, this is the right circumference
Yeah.
for a little puddle to come through, and I have the 2 centimeters to the right space enough to be in.
you see me move all the time.
Yeah.
That's why basically, because
Jesus
you're
Christ.
in the file. It happens.
It's unreal.
It
It's
happens.
a whole different World of Warcraft game, I gotta tell you guys.
Okay, well, we'll not getting into that, but still, so this is like the final list of the Mythic Plus Season 2 dungeons, and I don't know about excitement. I'm excited for the actual War Within dungeons. I'm not that excited for a couple of the dungeons that are coming
I'm
back.
curious to see what they do with the Floodgate. It would be the second dungeon release in an
Yeah,
expansion.
and
that's
it's going
not
to be a normal
dungeon.
dungeon, by the way. I mean,
Yeah.
classic dungeon. It's not going to be a mega dungeon, so that's...
Normally, we would have had these halfway through the season come as a mega dungeon with extra loot. Now it's just going to come as a full-on straight dungeon. I don't think... Was it Legion the last time we got a dungeon at the release of a patch? Did 7.1 come with anything new? I don't remember. No, we had 7.2 with Cathedral of whatever it
Mama?
was. The Darkness, the Broken Shore one. Yeah, so it's been a while. It's been quite a while.